Talking about misconceptions of New York. Well, the first misconception about New York is that the Caribbean is saltfish and New York is pork. And every Spanish man is Puerto Rican. That's a misconception. And Trinidadians hate Jamaicans. That's a wrong assumption. Him like soca man. Another misconception in the USA is that every Rasta man could sing reggae. And anybody giving you a fast tempo, that is calypso. Oh no. And like England, we have a female speaker with some clout. Our female speaker does with big men and kick them out. And if you think Tylenol could pass your headache better than we lemongrass, to show the worms where to pass. O.J. Simpson, he is guilty. He killed his wife, murder first degree. That's a misconception. Wait upon the jury. Oh yes, don't hear the talk. Misconceptions of New York. Yeah, in London, France, Boston, Canada, there are many misconceptions out there. All you just hear, that affair, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, brother. We are not a part of Jamaica. Though we sing reggae, that's in we culture. It's pan and kite, so there. You hear? So when you hear Harry Belafonte and Poindexter, that is not Kaiso, that is brandy mixed with water. And don't you think that Mighty Sparrow is the only king of Kaiso? There's also Kitchener, the grand master of Calypso. Tonight there are 8 Trinis here in this ring, but we are not the only ones who could sing. So overall must bring in Hitch and Black Stallion. Oh yeah, so it's time you know the right things about Trinidad. I like this conception. Misconception. Don't worry with all them set at Trini, posing in Canada as refugee. That's a misconception they're fooling you with, so as to get citizenship. And all them criminals up in Brooklyn, it's not Trinidadians doing the killing. We don't fight, we don't fuss, and when we cuss, we just say Paul. And that's all. We go to New York to shop, not to stay. We are not Haitians, we go run away. We are not from Bosnia where men die like mice. We come from paradise. And like England, we have a female speaker with some clout. Our female speaker does watch big men and kick them out. And if you see we police marching, we'll be there against Prime Minister Manning. For carnival, them and Manning, lining and drinking. Abu Bakr staged a coup there, but Abu Bakr we no longer fear. For this year, he was in the audience sipping ginger beer. So it's time you know the right things about Trinidad. A lie. Misconceptions. Misconception. Beautiful. Calypsonian Mighty Arrow is restarted soca. Oh no, that honor belongs to Rash Shorty, a resident of TNT. And when you hear Pan on Sesame Street, it's not Bert and Ernie who beaten sweet. That steel band is the creation of our land, not Japan. We are the only country in the world, I say, where government ministers just raise the pay. And as Calypsonians launch the attack, they just pay back. And Americans say Arsenio Hall is the best comedian. But I say he can't touch the shoes of our Tommy, Joseph, and Sprang-a-Lang. And if you see on our TV a man with his neck under a lady, he's not assaulting she, he just dancing the donkey. Michael Jackson, please come down here. Change your misconceptions about being fair. Come and play mass in Wisson and get back your color. Oh yes, so it's time you know.
Great things about Kaiso. Misconceptions, Dr. Hollis, Liverpool. The mighty Chogdas. PhD in musicology and African history. And a Kaisonian. only from the Caribbean. Only from the Caribbean you'll find a music man is also a scholar and so on. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Politics 101, the day after Independence Day. And Dr. Henry Jeffrey is here. Last week he had some difficulties, but he's here this week. And oh, what a difference a week makes. What a difference. We come on here tonight with all kinds of news. We are finding out today that the GECOM chair made a decision with the president that September 1st is going to be election day, and she didn't consult our fellow commissioners, not even the PPP commissioners. They said they didn't know. They got the revised work plan. Remember, they were working on a work plan for an early date of September 27th, I think, September 25th, or September 22nd, sorry. And while they were discussing that plan, the chairman apparently agreed with the president September 1st. So they now receive the new work plan today. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Lots happening. Mohammed announced that he's running for president. Running for president. Yesterday was Independence Day, 59 years of independence. The day before that, Venezuela should have held its election in Essequibo. Don't know what happened there. Lots happening in our country. We understand they named the governor, got 4,000 votes in some section across the border in Venezuela, and all of that. But a lot is happening, and Dr. Jeffrey, of course, is going to weigh in. So please share the link, please share the live, let everyone know that we are on tonight. Promising to be quite a week. It is going to be. Quite a week it's going to be. Share the live, whether you're joining us from Canada, the United States, Europe, Africa, South America down there in French Guyana, Dutch Guyana. Welcome to Politics One. Special good evening to the people of Bartica. We keep forgetting you all the time. And I realized a few weeks ago that we have quite a lot of viewers from Bartica. They were, I think last week we were doing folk songs and so on, and we do the Bartica man Bobby Lang like a lang down. Bartica people said, oh, for eventually, Dr. Hines, you remember Bartica. Bartica woman Bobby Lang like a lang dam. And they used to say Barakara woman Bobby Lang like a lang dam too. So it's not only Bartica they used to sing pan, they sing pan Barakara. And at that time I was small, but I never knew that Barakara was a Maroon community. We are so accustomed to the Maroon communities in Jamaica and Suriname, Barakara, and it came to the nation's attention when the young man Shamar Joseph burst onto the scene. But I think we're ready now for Dr. Jeffrey. Let's go. Dr. Jeffrey, good evening to you.
Good evening to you also, David, and your audience. And happy Independence, a new year.
Thank you. You would have experienced all of the independence, all of the years of independence, 59, and you would have had something, more than something to do with helping to articulate that independence in terms of governance and policies. First, working under the PNC, and then later on as a government minister under the PPP. And so it is not out of place to ask you, as you look back 59 years, do you think we have done justice to the promise of independence? Of course, you're going to ask me, well, what was that promise of independence? Well, you tell me what you think the promise of independence was, and whether, in fact, we have fulfilled the promise, and if yes, to what extent?
I think that, David, the promise was for a peaceful, prosperous, happy democratic state. And when Forbes born in 1964 did indeed make presentation, he said that, give him a couple of years and he will create such a state. The problem there, remember, there was an ethnic, racial problem before independence. Indeed, there was a lot of controversy about even independence itself. And whether or not you should have independence, whether or not the PPP was manipulated out of government, all of that, not whether or not they were. That's not in dispute. But we should have had, in general terms, we should have had a peaceful, united, prosperous democracy. It has not materialized to this day with all the oil. What we are fighting, nobody has confidence in the present regime. And yet, as I said in one of my articles, a simple thing like a girl was apparently killed in relation to a hotel, and the mothers and the parents feel that they need to go to America, even carry the whole body to America to get some kind of regress. What does that tell you? You should never ask me that question. That alone should have told you that after all these years. That is where we are. We are almost maybe worse because of the time span. I mean, as we came out of that with expectations, but after all these years, nearly 3/4 of a century, what? So we are worse off relatively because we are in the same place. The government, and even worse because I doubt even then they would have said, oh, I don't think that the border regime and the police gonna not do a proper invest. Imagine it has gone there. It has moved from the macro to the micro level of management. They're saying, believe them, they're all your cronies. And they're not wrong in the sense that the PPP, you just said it again. Every word you say and people, it substantiates the position that essentially the PPP has captured the state and is doing what it likes with it. So yes, I had read before that GECOM could be ready for election. But if you have a proper GECOM, it wouldn't sit down with all the commissioners and say this and that and discuss and so on and say, well, I will tell the and then the chair would say, well, I will tell the president that you can have election any time after what I did. You'll give him. Now, if you are saying that didn't happen, demonstrates quite clearly that what is going on in Ghana. So it's not a question of where we are. We have not gone very far in terms of maybe a little bit more. Well, we had to. By definition, prosperity had a little bit of that. But in terms of having a peaceful and democratic society, we do not. Every serious index in the world called Guyana something of a dictatorship one way or another. Even not an index of dictatorship. Look, the Transparency International now said they and their business sectors capture the state and doing precisely what they want. Because when you capture that and you see what they just did, call the chairman, she goes and well, she come back and tells people that's it. So that's where you are.
Dr. Jeffrey, let me ask you this. Obviously, the countries in the so-called post-colonial world coming out of colonialism, as far as those of us in the Americas, coming out, going back to slavery, certainly going into independence, there are challenges. There obviously must be challenges. How you turn a plantation into a nation, a tremendous challenges. And so what we have to be fair to ourselves in Guyana. But when you compare Guyana to other ethnically divided states, and you know, even in Africa, which is racially homogeneous for the most part, there were ethnic divisions. In fact, our own Arthur Lewis, in his treatise, was really talking about West Africa. And it was this, he was talking about the Caribbean and Guyana. Have other countries with the same challenges like Guyana done relatively better than us? Or are they all in the same boat?
I would say that they are nearly all in the same boat because they have a conception of governments that based on the British system. And the elite are brought up in that conception. Look, it's only recently Northern Ireland fungus vote.
Mm-hmm.
Sri Lanka was uproar until the government go and kill up all of the people. Sinhalese. Well, what the name of the opposition group go in the area and destroy them. Malaysia, yeah, that did a bit different because very early on they recognized that essentially there is nothing wrong with people voting for their groups. The trick is to set the system up so that everybody can have a voice and have an equitable living within it. You can't just say, oh, the British system won. You can win the British system maybe with one vote. And in Britain, that might be all right because there are, 75% European, English, or whatsoever. But the point is that when you come down here, it would not work. You have to do what they did in Northern Ireland after years of murdering and killing each other. So no, look at Cyprus. You know, the Greek and Turks, they are still a bit at loggerhead, but this society is divided. It is being essentially run as two states, but the United Nations still treat them as one state. So no, and I'm saying this, and look at what the regime here tried to do recently. Here, instead of dealing with the political system, they try to now impoverish one group to force them to join their group. Imagine that. You are trying for 3 decades. That's what the PVP been doing. Trying to impoverish the other group. So you'll be in a position to, you'll have to come and support them rather than constructing a system of governance that includes all people today. Anyway, you're going to raise this issue, but I'm not going to speak to it now. But today, it doesn't matter if you want to vote racially. That's your business. Let me put it like that. Let me raise it. You can vote ethnically, but their ethnic groups have rights.
Mm-hmm.
United Nations give ethnic group rights. You can't. They try to destroy the ethnic groups that the PPP has been doing with every ethnic group in Guyana. Well, they have suppressed the Amerindians almost totally, but they've been trying it with typology and not giving them this. So there is where you are. The answer to your question.
Yeah.
No, but the places, as I say, like Malaysia and so on, that has recognized and Northern Ireland recently, that has recognized the need for structural political change, the situation has been quite different.
Henry, let me read this. I'm sure you would have read it. This week's column by Ralph Ramkaran.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading it and to get your comment, partly not because I think Ralph is correct, but because I am frustrated that this kind of thing comes once a year from somebody like Ralph Ramkaran and not once a week. Let me read it. Guyana's wait for trust and confidence, which many supported in 2001, including the diplomatic community, because it had a specific time frame, namely the end of the constitution reform process, now effectively means that the PNC must behave itself before it can sniff the corridors of power. Well, no self-respecting party, which the PNC is, will succumb to what some tell their children: behave if you want a piece of chocolate. I have never spoken seriously to any PNC member about these matters, or for that matter, to any PPP member within recent times. But I believe that if Mr. Norton is to be approached with a plan for a higher level of cooperation, he will not decline such an invitation. But no doubt, reading between the lines of his recent statement, he will be looking for some bona fides. Whether or not he is right or wrong, the opposing side has to contend with such an approach. The more you give, the more they want is a common refrain. Well, Chetty Jagan was like that. Your comments, I mean, go ahead.
But David, yes, Ralph has said that at recent times. I mean, not recent times. He's said that before. But the question is, other people have said it. Quinn, the ambassador from Britain, he wrote a thing. Other people have said it. You are in Guyana. The question is simply not saying it, it's getting it done.
Yeah.
And when you have an elite, a political elite, and you see, this is where it even gets more complicated, because you had a opportunity to do it too.
Yes. In fairness. Yeah.
Right. You had an opportunity to do it. And I wrote 100 times. I said, I'm being weeping and gnashing of teeth if you all don't do this thing. But the question, and therefore, you can see is a mental thing. It comes down. You said Mohammed Ajay. Here he can come and say now, oh, people mustn't vote. We should don't bother voting about ethnic groups. Why? Voting about ethnic groups is not the problem. Since when there is the problem? There was a problem when you think that you can assimilate everybody in one group. You can bring English or whatsoever culture and put everybody gonna live by it, but people don't live like that. I think it's just Huntington in response to something called the end of history. Who was that? Who said the future would be the battle of cultures? Essentially, on a macro level, the battle of cultures, you got to if you want to vote for the race, let them vote for the race. But you must respect their rights to have their ethnic groups and everything existing. You can't tell people, oh, vote for the race or that. What you're doing now isn't democratic because you are killing half the ethnic group that they have rights. You're doing everything to force people not to vote necessarily for a democratic, but for you. Who you can't corrupt, you're forcing. And you do that. I think a couple of weeks I said on this program, The question people tend to ask, what did PNC ever do to me? I said it's not that. That is not a real question. The PNC and government is supposed to do things for everybody. The question is that throughout its history, the PNC has never done to Indians what the PPP has done to Black people. In every level, that is the question. The problem. And they have done it for one simple reason: to try to force you into their clique and whatsoever they are doing, trying to force you to vote for them. The few people on the streets out there that's getting a little pittance from doing all sort of mecha, the Scarlet War. But remember, the minute this government came to office, they cut this government spending on public service salary by half and increase it on infrastructure by 100%, nearly 100%. So effectively, since a whole lot of Africans are in the public sector, what happened? They took away your resources from the mother or sister who working as a teacher. The Americans had to come in them. That's why they don't like the Americans. That's why they put a poster to them. When Biden was gone, he put a poster to them, but they quickly took that down, knowing fully well might antagonize the neighbor and all of that. But that's not the point. That the PPP has done all this to one reason: try to get Black people to vote for them and keep them in power. They're trying to destroy every group, from my father to every single thing. Control the trade unions, what they can't control, this the staff of funds, every single thing. They're building a stadium for athletics. Black people are more athletic than in any country you go, and they put it where they put it.
Palmyra.
I mean, what kind of thing is this? I mean, you got to be an idiot not to see what's going on. You got to be a total idiot. I mean, it's just terrible. I think you would be hard pressed to show me this ask what PNC do. They better show me what the PPP do. I can show what they do in the negative. All the PICs, practical instruction centers that was in them villages, disappear. Now they're saying, oh, they're going and open it like if it's something new. And now they're saying you're scrapehead because you're confused. When people say scrapehead, they don't know that. They ply you with all sorts of crazy music on independence rather than let you talk about independence celebrations and what independence means, because they can't do that. So it's going to be Kelly, and then they themselves are complaining about the lewdness of Kelly. Whether or not Kelly is lewd doesn't matter. But this is a systemic thing that they've been doing for the longest while. So then what they do? They say you're unlettered, some of them, and the other ones say you're scrapehead.
Mm-hmm.
And if by scrapehead I mean confused, they're around. But this 30 years of PPP rule has created that.
Henry, let me ask you this, because you have been studying this thing as a scholar. You have been working in a practical way on both sides of the ethno-political divide. Burnham, obviously, in the early days of independence, had to do a dance, had to recognize that he was governing a country in which Indians had tremendous influence, tremendous power, economic sway, and so on. And so he was very careful about how he engaged the race question himself. But of course, he could do that because he had like Ascrea and so on dealing with the race problem and so on, and he walked that line there in the middle and so on. But as the situation has unfolded over the years, and the PPP got back into power and was most blatant, has become more blatant about what you're calling what they've done to black people. Do you feel the old Burnham approach of not dealing directly with the discrimination against African Guyanese, do you think that approach, and I think that approach, the PNC and the AFC still generally take that approach, do you think that that approach is correct today?
I think that Burnham had, remember, Burnham had a trump card. There was no way you could have removed Burnham or anybody wanted to remove Burnham because of Chedi Jaga.
Yes. Cold
You
War.
understand?
Right.
Chedi Jaga was a whole communist. So effectively, they might watch and sing about Burnham, but they are not going to remove Burnham because, and Burnham knew that. Burnham used to bring Chedi to the fore every time they say, well, this is the alternative. And that's why when you lot comes with Rodney, he could say there you are the other alternative. You remember what he said?
The
What
worst
WPPM mean? You are the worst possible alternative. That you are worse than Jerry. So effectively, but Burnham too believed, and most people in that era believed that as you have to, the people should do what young Mohammed talking about today. Essentially, stop voting for your race. Well, they're not going to do it. And even if at Burnham time, it wasn't clearly understood because, it's only in the 60s that the whole idea of shared governance come to fore.
Yes.
Long before that, from John Stuart Mill, people thought that countries like us, divided countries, are a waste of time. They can't go anywhere. Just like we are going nowhere, they thought that this is the normal process for these places. They ain't going to go anywhere because that one's going to vote for this one, one's going to vote for the other one. The only way, and it's in the 60s, late 50s, 60s, that this thing developed about shared governance. Arthur Lewis is said to, Arthur Lewis, as a matter of fact, Caribbean, is put down as the father of shared government for that same thing he did in West Africa, for that very same thing. So, yeah, and it has proliferated on almost everything. And today, of course, you have ethnic groups have rights. They have to have a voice. They have to have all of that. So what Ghana is doing is even breaking all UN rules. And effectively, if you're going to an election that is just to maybe operate as a selection, not going to a democratic election, so to speak. Where you're going is to choose the next autocratic government of one side or another, because the other side ain't got no say in anything. They would have to transform the system if they win. It's an autocratic government. They don't care. They don't mind being called autocrat. Maduro look like he cares. He's being called autocrat. But Putin look like he cares. He's called an autocrat. These people don't care. You get into power and you stay there by any means possible. And that is the root of what's happening here today.
What the current approach of the PNC and the AFC in particular?
Yes, sorry.
Right.
Yes,
of
that was what I mean.
not dealing with the racial discrimination against
because,
yeah.
Because they are incapable, it seems to me, to say to Indians, as the ANC said to the whites and others, we have a struggle going on for our basic rights. We understand that you two are discriminated, not the whites, but the other are discriminated in some way also. But listen, we're going to have to take some radical steps to do this. If you can't join us, don't. Don't. Because we are not going to sit down here and believe that somehow you got it's not happened for 60 years, all of that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless we do what Jack you are doing. Indeed, if PPP would claim that is what you all tried to do when you were in there. They would say, you see what happened to the sugar workers? That was a little forced move that you were doing. So to pressure them to break up the sugar thing, to say this, that. But if you got to go to that level, it is not nonsense. It's not just recognize people for what they are and let us run this country together. There's enough here for all of us. All of us. So the PNC has not been able to sing that. They're still there in the assimilationist mode. Just like young Rahman come up and says, It's the same thing. Oh, Indians ain't gonna vote. Indians ain't voting for you anyways. And he ain't getting either, no, any young Rahman getting no Indian vote. The Indian vote is more solid in Guyana than the African vote, and that is where he might get some of. And the Indian villages are locked down too. They're better organized because remember, that's all they had to exist on for 30 years of Burnham rule. They had to pump up the people about anti-Burnham, anti-thing, and it all always boiled down to ethnicity. Jenna J going to stand up and say, don't split the votes every election. What do you think she means by that? So effectively, that's where we are. And until the PNC and them can start understanding that the rights of African people is not to fight for the rights of African people in a legitimate way, is not to deny the rights of any other people. Mm-hmm. It's to call on those in those communities that are serious to stand and let's fight together. And the whites, many whites in South Africa went with the ANC. Many Indians in South Africa, not the whole, substantially all them, but they went. But you got to put your struggle ahead of something, I don't know what, dreamy idea that you're going to get this substantial vote. You are not going to get it.
You are not going to get it, as many of you know, or most of you know. I have come to that conclusion. And it has nothing to do with my lack of respect for Indian people, but it's where the politics are at the moment, and we risk really pushing Guyana to the Northern Ireland thing. So many hundreds and thousands died in Northern Ireland before they come. I would not like to see our country go down that. Henry, when you were here 3 weeks ago, it was just after the blow up, the week after the blow up, when the body of that young child was fished out of the pool in that hotel. 3 weeks on, there is no solution to what may appear to be a simple, straightforward case. Now the body, as you have pointed out, has been shipped to America. Are you surprised that what would under normal circumstances be a routine thing has really reached the level that it has reached?
Well, yes, to be truthful, I can see, you see, the police made, the police, I don't think Indian or Africa or nobody got any faith in the police hierarchy. And it's over, not just this year, It's over how everything has been happening in the police force, how they're being appointed by that. It's not, I'm not saying it, it's there for people to say. There's no confidence, no faith in the police system. And then this police officer come and said a girl gone with somebody in a car. Now, I said, I'm trying to rationalize it away from him in the sense that I'm saying maybe he said that because the crowd wanted to go in. And perhaps if he said that the girl got in the car, people would say, oh shit, what are we going in there for? But nobody bought it because all the people there were saying no, she had got out of no car and all of that. The simplest thing when all of this happened was, and people start saying the thing is neutral. They want a neutral, but how would the PPP go and bring people that they have relationships with? From the hospital in Sinai, in Mount Sinai in America, they have big relationship with Joshua Hospital. So how would you go and do that? It's like a madness. So the rationale, the people are saying you could have just woke up and said, here, given you don't have faith in what has happened here. Good. We think that we have done our best. You go and find who you want. Don't tell us. We will, within reason, pay for it whatsoever. But when you behave like they behave, everything that when they go to find another man, they go and find a resignee that is accountable to no one. I mean, what? Jeez, why they call them Norwegians? They must be the most uniquely considered neutral people in the world. Why they call them and say, or tell the family, Norway is that, check them out and see if you want them to come and do this. Why you are going intervening all over the place? So it leaves the impression that something is wrong on the ground. Mm-hmm. And it's not it cannot be a false impression because at every stage you involve, you want people that you have some leverage and understanding with. I mean, why? It can't be stupidity. You're this scrapehead stupid. All you have to do is say, look, all you talk to you want and get. Once the thing get, do your own thing. We would pay this thing. But the minute you don't do that, and then you can send me some stupid, you can create precedent. Those things don't happen every day. So wait, like the plan is going to happen every day to set for some sort of precedent. Mm-hmm. These things are making God, it don't happen every day. But that is, and so people should have that right. What president? One every 10 years? Yeah, do it. If people don't have faith in what you are doing, but your government, and I think that is another part of it. If you got to run after New York, as now they are, well, you show that you're really not any government that many people in this country feel safe with. Because this is a simple country. This is a simple family. This is not no big ideologue like David Hines and all of them. And they don't feel safe. They don't feel it. And they got good reason not to do so because every time you go and handle it, you want somebody you got some relationship with to be involved.
Jeffrey, let me pose some questions, some quick, as they say in the media world, rapid fire questions here. Mm-hmm. We've been hearing for over a year. Elections are likely to be in November. GECOM said, look, the earliest we can do is September 22nd.
Yeah.
The government seemed very comfortable with that timeline. And then the Adriana thing happened and so on and so forth. And suddenly, out of the blues, you have this September 1st date. And as it turned out, it's a date that worked out between the president and the chair of the
Yeah.
commission. So there are
Yeah.
two issues there.
Yeah.
One is that clearly the PPP changed their game plan. Clearly, it's obvious that they wanted an earlier date. And second, the chairperson acting. I mean, okay, you vote mostly with the PPP. You getting away with it. Opposition quarreling, but I mean, we take it in stride over time. But you've gone now to the point where you are going to fix a date behind the back of your own commissioners and then come back and give them the work plan after. Accommodating, obviously, a PPP change agenda. Talk to us.
First of all, David, let me follow you here.
Yeah.
There was a talk. I thought GECOM said they can have any date from the 27th. I thought that was made public.
Yes, that was made public.
Well, if they had said made that public, they must have discussed it at GECOM.
Yes.
Good. So if the lady goes and she ain't gonna make any date. She just give him the date. There's nothing for to speak about. He didn't even have to call her. He could have just sit down and say, I want September the 1st. Based on what you all have already said. What you want gaff about? You understand what I'm saying? So don't think he didn't have to call her. The president could only, he said, I want September the 1st. Oh, you give me a thing. So that's what I've chosen.
But she said publicly,
yes,
the 22nd is the earliest date.
The 20th with
22nd of September. So he should have said October.
September?
Yes, September.
I thought it was August. Anyway.
No, it was September.
Okay.
So you're right. I mean, she didn't have to call him. He could have said October 1st.
Yes. But I didn't hear their recent discourse. But certainly, the president can't change the date by himself. GECOM got to change the date.
Yes.
Their schedule. So, yes. So, I mean, yes, you're correct. It's GECOM government. But what's new?
Yeah.
I mean, why you're making a fuss? People be doing what it's like. It's capture the state. It's what Transparency International said it. They have captured the state. They are going to just want the election as something they're going to put them back in government. They don't care if it's democratic or autocratic. They don't care.
Jeffrey, let me stay. You were in government.
Yeah.
So you know some of these things work. If you watch and see, the police say this child, they tell a lie about this child. The people figure the government is covering up.
Yeah.
They literally closed down the country in one night.
Yeah.
Why are you risking antagonizing them further?
Because I want to stay in power. Ask Maduro why he doing what he do. He went to election and he may lose here coming out. Ask Putin. He's there doing all these things. Simple as that. I want to stay in power. I don't care anything about democracy. That is out the window. They're gone for many reasons. They're gone long before we were saying you're suppressing groups, you're financing of election, all that gone. Democracy gone. I am going to run an autocratic state, an electoral autocratic state that's on the way down to becoming a real autocracy. I don't care. I don't have to bother anymore. I'm not bothering with these finesses. And therefore, you end up where we are.
I have to agree. but it's still bothers to me.
Oh my God! But it's nothing that it is what they don't care. They don't care. I'm not talking to you until you say that I didn't that I wouldn't rig an election. What? Every government and thing that people can't say to one another, you rig, and rig. But nobody has ever said, Barnum, that's a Barnum rig election. Barnum, you stop telling Jake and all they been talking about it, Parliament and everything. But they don't care.
Jeffrey, look. on the weekend, GHK Lal, a few days ago, wrote this column floating the idea of Carl Greenwich being a consensus candidate. I can tell you that I have received no less than 6 calls from opinion shapers asking my view on it. Will I support it, etc., etc. Is this at the 11th hour still a continuation of wanting to this away from Norton?
Yeah,
or is it really a serious thing?
Then the election is called now. Let's see what gonna happen. The truth is that this, the democratic mindset is a mindset you got to get,
Mm-hmm.
Half of these, well, more than half, 90% of them never even live in a democracy. They live under Barnum autocracy, and then for about a couple of years under GECOM, which was just trying to hold on to power, they live under another autocracy. In your party, it's the same. You got Norton go and won a democratic election. The way to deal with that, if you think Norton has shortcomings, is to try to get people in place that can deal with those shortcomings. You can't go now telling Norton, we don't want it. Remember, he won an election now. It's the same organization going and tell him now, all right, compromise, give up. It can't be a joke. It's got to be a joke. That's not commitment to democracy. I just won. By definition, it means I'm the person. Now you are saying, hey, you are not suited. Who determined who is suited? I've never heard a good argument to tell me why Norton isn't suited. Never. It's all sort of subjectivisms all over the place with this, that, Bamba Mali, and look the part and all sort of nonsense. The truth is that they're not got that commitment. When you go against them, you remember I supported Carl in
against Granger.
2000, Carl Greenwich.
Right.
Against Granger. And I was at Bamba Mali, and I heard Carl won. My people called me and said, Jeff, Carl won. Next day, just the table to overthrow. Now the table overturned, and then the recount.
and Norton was supposed to be in charge of the table as Carl. As Carl
and Amna was in full play. And
Amna was in full play.
So, politics is nice in Ghana from us. Carlos, all right. Carlos. Okay, we know Carlos, but we asked that thing. Now, so Carl become president. So, no, they want Carl. Oh, shucks. What's happening here? I go on. I think you're not seeing me. I hope you're
I'm seeing you. You're fine.
All right, good. So now they want Carl to effectively do to Norton what they did to him.
We've lost. We have lost Dr. Jeffrey there. He's going to come back. He's going to come back. Very interestingly, we're talking there about the Carl Greenwich um, uh, Brigadier Granger race back in 2010, I think it was, that was narrowly won by Granger. Many people thought that Carl Greenwich had won. And very interestingly, but some of you may have seen the article by GHK Lal in which he's saying, look, if Hughes and Norton can't agree, why not have Carl Greenwich as a consensus candidate? And it's a fair suggestion. I don't think GHK Lal is being malicious. I think he is really bemoaning the fact that the two of them can't agree, regardless of who may be blamed. The two of them can't agree. And he said, well, why not Carl? As I said, I got several calls over the weekend in my capacity as a co-leader of the WPA to say where I stand on the issue. And my position is that I don't have a problem with Carl Greenwich if he is legitimately agreed on as the candidate. What I do have a problem with is if Carl is now belatedly being used to do what the others have not been able to do, which is to take away the thing from Norton. That is my problem. If Norton says, I'm gonna support Carl, and Nigel and the AFC said they will support Carl, we don't have a problem with supporting Carl. We don't. We think that Carl is, like all of them, quite qualified. But as I said to everyone that I've spoken to, that if the attempt is to use Carl to wrench this thing away from Norton at this 11th hour, I will have some problems with that. So it's interesting to see where things are. The coming weeks are going to be very crucial. The election date, unless something dramatic happens, the election date is going to be September 1st. And so we have about 3 months to put things together. I still am of the view that a grand coalition, including the AFC, the PNC, WPA, and others, is the best way to go. I heard a PPP man say last night that the African Guyanese vote is premium, and that is why the PPP going after it. The same man is roasting me for urging the opposition to go after African Guyanese vote. Premium. They're saying it's premium. No, I know African Guyanese vote is premium. I know the land. And I know that's why. So the PPP wants to go after African Guyanese vote because it's premium. And here's why African Guyanese vote is premium. If the census is showing Indian Guyanese at 34%, and it's showing African Guyanese at 29%, and it's showing mixed people at 25%, we know that 3/4 of the mixed people is really black people in terms of their political behavior. So if you said 25% mixed people, 18 of that 25 is black people. 29 plus 18 is 47. 34 plus 7 is 41. It means that there are more quote-unquote black people in the population. No, I didn't have to go to university to figure that out. So even some black people, David Hines, somebody meet my brother, good friend. He said, man, tell your brother that if we win, we can win with all the races. there's some black middle class people don't understand that black people are the majority in the population. And that is why their premium, it jumped out last night from a PPP man mouth that the black vote is premium. It has to be premium because it's the majority vote. It's not over 50%, but it's close to 50%. And that my overall strategy, that your first option is your base, which now is a large plurality. Then your second option is to get a share of the Amerindian vote. And then your third option is to squeeze as much Indian votes as possible, knowing. So it's not that you're ignoring Indian votes, it's real politics. Why spend more money on something that is harder to get than spend it on something that is easier to get? It is easier to convince the black voter who suck the teeth at you than to convince the Indian voter that cussing you every day. At least the black voter sucking the teeth and say, when have you been there? And you didn't do nothing for me. It is easier to convince him than the Indian voter who the PPP has poisoned their mind that the PNC is poison. Norton is poison. Nigel Hughes is poison. David Hines is poison. You already have an uphill task there. So it's a matter of real politics. A matter of real politics. And the PPP knows that. Freddie Kutsuna spent the last 3 columns trying to convince Norton that he cannot have David Hines and WP on his ticket because he's not going to get Indian vote. That's their new strategy. Remember a few weeks ago, Nandlal said, the uprising that happened is David Hines and the WPA. They're responsible. Well, of course, he put it that way. What he's in effect saying is that David Hines and the WPA are influencing people's minds. Then Freddie and the other propagandists are now saying Norton should cut loose and don't have David Hines and WPA in a coalition. Pick sense out of nonsense. Pick sense out of nonsense. Pick sense out of nonsense. Remember the anger against me because I talk about these guys who are going across. Look at Daniel Siram today, Indian brother from the PNC, who became the regional chairman. They put it as a regional chairman for Region 4 because they wanted to prove that they're multiracial. I know that for sure. Nobody had tell me that. There were other people who were more capable of being the Region 4 chairman. They put the Indian brother because they wanted to prove that they're multiracial. The brother get into some trouble, domestic trouble. The PPP was hanging him high. Are you remember? No, that brother gone to the PPP. That Indian brother gone to. This is not a commentary on Indians. It is where the politics are. It is where the politics are. Look at one of the chaps from one small party. He gone to PPP. I'm saying you're seeing a trend where Indian Guyanese opposition members are drifting to the PPP. And I am not cussing them. I am not surprised by it because I understand where the politics are. And that is why I am saying to African Guyanese, you may have lots of problems and you have every right to have problems with us. It was problematic when we were there for the 5 years. as far as the way we dealt with African Guyanese issues. But to go to the PPP is really to jump from the frying pan into a big fire. And that is what I've been spending the last 5 years doing. I've been called racist and all kinds of things. Now even the PPP is admitting that the African Guyanese vote is premium. We worked that out in the WPA 5 years ago. It is not that we are saying that Indian votes are not important. Indian votes are important, but it's the hardest vote for a coalition on the opposition side. It's the hardest vote. I think the Indians who are going to vote for an opposition coalition have made up their minds already. And nothing you do now can convince those who are going the other way. And so, where the PPP is beating us, I think it's on the race question. Because our side still has not worked out clearly the race question. You make sacrifices today because you have to win an election. If we didn't have to win an election, my emphasis would have been different. I am a power sharer. I believe at the end of the day, the representatives of Indian people, African people, got to sit down in the same government and work. I believe that at some point the PNC, PPP, WPA, AFC, all we got to sit down in one government and run the country. That is my ultimate goal. But given the winner-take-all thing, one side got to win. And I am asking, what is the most effective strategy for an opposition win? The no opposition to win, to get 51, 52, 53% of the vote. What's the most effective strategy? And so therefore, that's where we are. Now, the Mohammed thing is interesting. I share the general view. There's going to be a ding-dong battle between Mohammed and the PPP. I'm saying that in me business. That's not my business. Let them battle it out. They were comrades. The PPP made Mohammed. Let them battle it out. Mohammed may get some Indian votes. We don't know. Mohammed may get some Indian votes. He may not. But I'm saying that's not our business. Let them battle it out. We got our own battle. The battle between the AFC and the PNC. Let me work out that battle. Let me work that battle out. It's a battle between the old middle class and the new middle class. Black middle class. The battle between Mohammed and the PPP is the same battle. The battle between the Indian political class and the new Indian economic class, money class. Mohammed represents this new Indian class that the PPP give contracts and give this and give that, and they've now become super stinking rich. And they're now clashing with the people who make them. So it's the political class, the Indian political class, and the Indian economic class. That's the clash between Mohammed and the PPP. Let them work it out. We black people, we have our own clash between the old middle class, represented by Nigel Hughes and the AFC, and the new black middle class, represented by Norton. Let we work out our differences. Let them people work out the differences and see where it goes. Let them work it out. Sometimes black people think we are too cute. We think we are too cute. The most Mohammed can do is get some seats. He's not going to become president. Yeah, some black people jumping up. He's not going to become president. So we on the opposition side got to work out our own differences. And of course, AUC, Jarvis, I think Mohammed is more likely to take some black votes. I'm not burying my head in the sand. I would not like that to happen. I would not like that to happen. Because if he takes black votes, he's weakening our ability to win. And at some point, we have to talk to black people and say that to them. That this battle is not just a battle between parties, it's a battle between races. And ideally, when the races done battle, we should all sit down in a government and run the country together. But that's not the system. One race gonna win and run the country. And so therefore, why we must not look after our racial interests while others are looking after their racial interests. The PPP is looking after its own racial interests. Amerindians are more and more doing that. Schumann come from nowhere. He used to fly plane in Canada. He come from nowhere. And he get 2,000-3,000 Amerindian votes. He get a vote, he serve in parliament, he support the PPP, go back and fly plane. Elections come, he come back again. And he gonna get Amerindian votes. And Amerindians have a right to vote for their fellow Amerindians. Because Indians are voting for Indians. And Africans generally are voting for Africans. But some Africans are into this thing. Look, I'm gonna vex with the coalition. If the coalition wins, and if it wins, it will win with the majority of African votes. But if having won with African votes, it then proceed just to govern for Africans, I will be against that. And so we have to make a differentiation between racial unity as input and racial unity as outcome or output. You're not going to win with any multiracial vote. The PPP knows that. And that is why the PPP beat is biting. Because Indians do not have a plurality, a big plurality anymore. When you take the Indian, if all of those 34% vote for PPP, they got another 6 or 7% Amerindian, another 3 or 4% mix. They still can't win with that. So our African vote become a premium. And we have to find a way to get African people to go out there and vote. And we have to convince them that you're voting not just for a party or a coalition of parties. You are voting for African self-respect. You're voting for African dignity. You're voting that there will be no more Adriana Young, sorry. There'll be no more Fajine and Ronaldo. There'll be no more Quindon Backers. You are voting for some real things. There'll be no more Mocha. When you don't have a seat at the table, you have no power. We're seeing that. The people can call the election date and tell you is election day. You have no say. Today, look, our 3 commissioners had to walk out. Because they have no say. No say. How are you going to get a say if you don't vote for your own party or parties? Get into power and then negotiate with the other side on how we going to manage this power. The other side got into power and shocked me out totally. The risk, the temptation is that we should get into power and shock them out. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we get into power and negotiate how we're going to govern the country together. But we have to get into power. And we're only going to get into power by the votes of our people. We didn't make it like that. We come and meet it. And we try to change it. I spend the first 3/4 of my political life fighting for multiracialism. And I remember in 1997 at Kitty Market Square, a young African girl, couldn't be more than 21, 22. She was standing at the WPA meeting. I gave her a handbill. And she said, "Good night, Mr. Hines." I said, "Good night." She said, I was passing, going home, and I hear that this is a WPA meeting, and I really like you all WPA people. You all could talk good, you all get good ideas, and so I stopped for the meeting. I said, "Well, you going to vote for me?" She smiled, she turned her head. She said, "Mr. Hines, they ain't got no party named Multi, you know. I like the multiracial thing, but I ain't got a party named Multi." I will never forget that. She likes our multiracialism, but she's not going to vote for us because she know multiracialism don't win election. That little girl, I wish I could meet her today. She gave me a wisdom that has never left me. Ideally, all of us are multiracialists. All of us would like to see us work together, build the country. But you got to win an election. And in the history of Guyana, from 1957 onwards, no party has won an election with multiracial nothing. The coalition won in 2015 with a decisive, small portion of the Indian votes. But the vast majority of the vote were African votes. So we have to educate ourselves and understand that sentiments will get us nowhere. Yes, they're going to call us racist. They're going to call I have gotten used to that now. But as Dr. Jeffrey says, we have to be frank and say to Indian people, we understand why you all are taking the positions you all take. It's not an irrational position. It's a very rational position. We rather go with we Jumbie than you all Jumbie. That's quite rational. But when we are doing the same thing, don't call us racist. Don't. I do not think Indians are racist because they vote PPP. No, I don't think so. I do not think so. So why do you call me racist because I'm asking black people to vote for the opposition side? So, sisters and brothers, there we are. We have to think strategically, and we have to think in a sensible way, or else we're going to left behind again, and we will have no one else to blame for ourselves but ourselves. We have no one else to blame for ourselves. This is not a normal election where you go, you vote, and whoever win or whoever lose, everything is going to be all right. No. No. This really is, this election is about African Guyanese. Frankly speaking, Indian Guyanese feel that they're okay. Amerindian Guyanese are outside of the process in many ways. You know, they're in the interior, neither race treat them with respect. African Guyanese are in the mix of things. And African Guyanese have been treated badly by the PPP. So this election is about us. Are we going to remain treated badly, or are we going to gain power to stop the bad treatment? People call me all the time, those who don't like Norton, and say, David, you know, Norton is not electable. And I say, well, tell me why he's not electable. And they can't give me any sensible reason. People have a right to choose who they want. They got some people tell me, David, you and the WPA should be it. People have a right to say that. People have a right to say I for Norton. People have a right to say that I for Nigel Hughes. People have a right to say I for Campbell or whoever else. People have a right to choose their best candidate. That's your right. But then to look at the candidate that you don't like and say he's unelectable is where you lose me. That's where you lose me. Everybody got a right. You go, you choose a man to be your husband. Does that mean that every man you didn't choose bad, unmarriageable? I don't think that's what you're saying. As they say in Quaker wisdom, Avisa married. If I like a she can married, then me can marry too. If girl like a them can married, me can marry too. If man like a he can married, me can marry too. Not because you married one man, it means that all the other men are no good. Let me bring that to politics. Not because you choose Aubrey, it means that Nigeria is no good, unelectable. Hines is no good, unelectable. Or not because you choose Aubrey, Nigel, Aubrey is no good, Hines is no good. What kind of warped thinking is that? What kind of warped thinking is that? So, sisters and brothers, we got work to do. Time to close ranks. Time to close ranks. Dr. Hines algebra is my favorite subject, having said that APNU won by a small amount of crossover. So as it now, there will be a subtraction of votes from both major parties. What will be the new outcome? Bring out more of your own votes, you see. In the last 3 elections, African turnout was between 72 and 77%. It means that 25% of African people did not vote, whereas the average turnout in the Indian community was 89%. If we can carry up our turnout to 84%, we are unbeatable. The key, as the PPP is saying, is that African vote is premium. And the key is to bring them out. Why do you think the PPP was trying to influence these people that now call in scripts? Because those people don't vote, generally. And so they were trying to influence them as a way of suppressing African votes. My thing is that those people, we go after them to get their votes. We go after them to get their votes. Crossover votes come once in a lifetime. You look at all the elections. 2011, 2015, we got 2011 more than 2015. We got some crossover votes. That's it. And no other election in our history has crossover votes made the difference. I'm not asking, I'm telling you all you see. Crossover vote is once in 10 lifetime. So if you base your algebra on that, you're in trouble. You're basing your chances of victory on something that happens once in a lifetime. In 2006, African left the PNC. Where did they go? To the AFC under Trotman. I cross over to the PPP. During our time, WPA time on the road was election time. We were on the road and we got support from both sides. Africans come on the road and support me. Indians come on the road and support me. When it's election, the Indians in droves went back to the same PPP that they left to come. I remember black people watch us and say, them Indians going back, what you all expect me to do? And they end up voting for the PNC. Our votes came from Buxton. We got 1/3 of the vote in Buxton. And we got about 1/5 of the vote from Amerindians. And that gave us a seat. 1/3 of the votes in Buxton and about 1/5 of the Amerindian votes. When we were on the street fighting Burnham, the Indians came to us. Once free election come, they went back to the PPP. This crossover thing is a myth. It's a myth. When they saw the election in Trinidad recently, oh God, black people cross over and vote for Kamala. When they do look at the numbers, 102,000 black people stayed away from the poll. That is what made the difference. 102,000 black people, because the PNM put a Chinese man instead of a black woman to be the prime minister. And black people say, it's pass we. And they say, punish the PNM. Punish the PNM. So it's not no crossover happening in Trinidad. But the Indian commentators would have us believe that. Not me. So, sisters and brothers, we got to start thinking very seriously. I want to thank those of you all who have shown your all support behind the WPA. I want to thank. And as I said over and over again, we are not going to take your support and go to the PPP. That support is going into a coalition, an opposition coalition. You have every right to identify which coalition party you are supporting. But we then pool our votes together and get rid of the danger. The PPP in government is a great danger. We have to first get them out of government before we can put some sanity in their heads. Lots of work to do. Tomorrow night, Vincent Alexander is going to be here to tell us everything behind the scenes at GECOM. The commissioners had a press conference this morning, and then they walked out of the GECOM meeting in which they put in the new revised plan. No, they decide on the election is September 1st, and no, they bring in the plan after the decision. Decision does come before plan. In this case, they decide on the plan does lead to the decision of the date. Now the date come, and then they adjust the plan for suit the date. So whereas you have 21 days for claims and objection on a list, now you got 4 days. So there are technical implications. There are political implications, but above all is the sign that GECOM has turned the running of the elections over to the president and the PPP. That is unconstitutional, it's immoral, and we as a country should not acquiesce to it. We should not acquiesce to it. Yes, John. Black women got it right again, Dr. Hines. Looking for 6, 7, and 8. Yeah. The most reliable of our voting blocks are black women. In the United States, there are 2 reliable voting blocks: old white people and black women. Old white people, of course, vote Republican. Black women vote Democrat. In Guyana, the most reliable voting bloc on our side is black women. Black women. I read the comments on Facebook, and they tend to be much more pragmatic and much more conscious than our men folk. I'm not putting down men, but we men, we tend to be too cute sometimes in our analysis. We want everything to be perfect. I guess the experience of women having to run a house with a budget of $100,000, but they get $60,000, they got run the house with a deficit. They have more of a pragmatic sense of things than men. Men, we want everything to be perfect. Perfect. You know? Nothing's not perfect. So we chanting it down. We want perfect. Perfect. Women know that you got punch. You got punch and make ends meet. And that's what we have to do. We don't have a perfect candidate, but we have very good candidates. And we have to make something out of it rather than fighting one another down. So that's the message for tonight. Tomorrow night, I'll be back again for another edition of Politics 101. We are in campaign mode. Thanks to the people of Buxton for turning out last night to the public meeting we had for Adriana there. Thanks to you and those of you who came from other villages. Thanks. WP is going to stay on the road. We are now ready to go on the road, and the other communities are going to be seeing us in the coming weeks, playing our role in trying to bring home the victory.